Yes, I do want to speak here today a little bit about this interplay of private power and political repression and how they are interwoven in both recent history and really 20th century history largely. My comments are prompted by two contemporary instances in which issues of civil liberties, political self-organization, and social inequality have achieved a fairly high profile level of debate in the public discourse. The first is the now chronic, ever-present debate about the power, legitimacy, and economic impact of America's largest corporation, Walmart, which I'm writing a book about. I mean, it's in the news every day. It's just remarkable for one reason or another. And Walmart, of course, it's the largest corporation. I mean, in terms of employment, certainly. It has about 1.8 million workers worldwide, which is something like 1.4 million in the U.S. Something that's a little bit more than almost 2% of all American workers work for Walmart, slightly less. And it's about 3% of the GNP, so it's at the same level as U.S. Steel was 80 years ago, and things of that sort. But it's not just because it's big. It's because Walmart is a pattern setter, and also because the debate over this company has become a venue for a set of interwoven contests that might be thought of as a continuous red state, blue state political campaign, in which every site fight, court case, union organizing campaign, press release, and sales report represents yet another skirmish in a battle that is about far more than the fate of a single corporation. Today, there are more people who work in retail than who work at, in factories, in manufacturing. It's really. I mean, Target, we're now in the headquarters of Target, and actually, despite Target's more stylish clothing and whatnot, the way that company functions is really identical to Walmart. It's like Ford invents an assembly line, and all of a sudden everyone has an assembly line. Well, the same is true of the whole retail sector. Between corporate power and American democracy, wrote Henry Demarest Lloyd, "It is ridiculous to imagine that the wage workers can be slaves in employment and yet achieve control at the polls. There never yet existed coincident with each other autocracy in the shop and democracy in political life." Mutual incompatibility, either because corporate power would directly corrupt and control the existing forms of representative democracy. It was said, of course, that the Standard Oil Company could do anything it wanted with the Pennsylvania legislature except refine it. Or the other way in which the corporate power was total and oppressive, or that the serf-like dependence of so many laborers on the new robber barons was so demoralizing that a kind of authoritarian state and culture would be inevitable. Haymarket and Homestead were the icons of this sort of regime, in which Pinkertons and the coal and iron police, company towns and company stores represented a direct, unmediated exercise of power within the immigrant working class communities of that era. Jack London, Upton Sinclair, Sinclair Lewis, Ada Tarbell, even Samuel Gompers were the tribunes who warned against the political damage of such unfettered corporate power, and that's a familiar story. But it's interesting. I mean, overly familiar in a way, cliched in a way. But what's interesting is that this kind of discourse really vanished during the middle decades of the 20th century, and for two reasons. First, the New Dealers thought that they had tamed the corporate beast, either through regulation, pluralist systems of countervailing power sharing, or self-reform that transformed business from a profit-maximizing capitalist enterprise to a bureaucracy whose greatest danger was conformity, claustrophobia, and complacent affluence. This was the idea of Galbraith in affluent society, of many of the critics, many of the critics of the 1950s. And second, the left and liberals, for good reasons and a few bad ones, now became fixated upon a set of explicitly political, state-centered forms of repression, i.e. Stalinism, fascism, McCarthyism. I mean, very good reasons to be fixated on these, but nevertheless, there was a kind of, that was where I mean, almost all political debate and discussion took place about that. From left to right, intellectuals and policymakers thought that the threat to civil liberties came directly and largely from the state, from Frederick Hayek to C. Wright Mills, James Burnham, Hannah Arendt, likewise Roger Baldwin of the ACLU, and Robert Taft, the GOP, left and right. They were fixated on state repression for many, many good reasons, obviously. And it wouldn't be hard to think of them as right in the middle of the 20th century. But there were two consequences of this, especially when it came to corporation and to the nature of political life within the corporation. And I think we should think of, I mean, if politics is a total institution, we have to think we can't just segregate life at work from life outside of work. They're both political activities. The left and the left historians who have followed saw the anti-communist purges of the trade union movement and of the university as decisive, important limitations to liberalism and democracy. And they were. But the implications of such a historiographic stance is that once the purge is finished, then we are left with a unionism, or a working class for that matter, without, not necessarily organized, a unionism which is complicit and integral to the claustrophobic corporate liberal, that was the phrase of art 20, 30 years ago, corporate liberal regime that was left standing. This was the view of someone like C. Wright Mills, for example, of Daniel Bell, of James Weinstein, of really the generation of labor historians and social historians who came to kind of prominence in the 1970s, 80s. Of all those who thought that a corporate liberalism described American industrial practice and political life at mid-century. But that view is now faded.